Sometimes, danger hides in the most innocent moments. And today, a simple kite nearly takes a life. In Suncrest Park, the city's annual Kite Festival was in full swing. The sun cast a warm, golden glow over the green fields, with kites of all shapes and colors soaring high in the sky, filling the air with a sense of joy and celebration. Children ran across the open expanse, their laughter carried by the breeze as they tugged on strings that kept their colorful creations afloat. The sounds of distant chatter and the whirring of windmills made the afternoon feel almost magical. Amidst the crowd, one particular boy stood quietly off to the side, his eyes tracing the movements of the kites above. Meet Jaden Carter, a 9-year-old boy with big brown eyes and a thoughtful expression that rarely left his face. While most of the other kids in the park were playing or chatting with friends, Jaden stood apart, soaking in the sights and sounds of the festival. His clothes, though simple and worn, spoke volumes about his life. His shoes were scuffed, and his pants had seen better days. But the pride in his posture and the quiet confidence with which he carried himself told a different story. Jaden wasn't used to big events like this. He lived in a small apartment with his mother, who worked tirelessly, taking up multiple jobs just to keep food on the table. Jaden understood what it meant to struggle, but he also knew the value of hard work and sacrifice. His mother had saved up just enough money to bring him to the Kite Festival, a rare occasion where he could step away from his responsibilities and just be a kid, experiencing a day full of wonder. And for once, Jaden felt like he was no different than the other children running around, laughing and enjoying the festivities. Today was special, not just because of the festival, but because of the chance to escape their everyday routine. Jaden had heard about the rich kids who got to live a life of ease and luxury, but he had always kept his distance from those stories. He never expected to fit in with that crowd. His focus had always been on his family and on surviving, not on dreams of wealth or privilege. However, in a different corner of the park, the stark contrast to Jaden's life was standing in the open. Meet Oliver Kensington, a 9-year-old boy who had everything one could imagine: a mansion, private tutors, and the kind of life most children only dream of. His father, Richard Kensington, was one of the wealthiest and most powerful businessmen in the city. Oliver's family owned half the real estate in Suncrest, including this very park where the festival was held. While Jaden admired the kites, Oliver lived in a world where everything was already given to him. His life was a blur of private events, chauffeured cars, and lavish homes. Oliver was at the park with his nanny, who watched from a distance, her eyes scanning the area with vigilance. Oliver, on the other hand, was more interested in the kite he was flying. He didn't have to try hard to make it soar. His expensive kite was expertly designed and flown with ease. He smiled, a sense of pride shining in his eyes as he tugged at the string. He didn't know it, but the very thing that brought him so much joy would soon bring danger, and in a way, it would bring him closer to Jaden, even if for just a moment. At that moment, a sudden gust of wind caught the kite, sending it spiraling out of control. The wind grew stronger, and the string jerked violently, pulling Oliver toward the edge of the field. His small frame stumbled, his hands reaching desperately for the kite. But before he could regain control, the string broke free. The kite soared away, the wind yanking it faster and faster into the sky. Oliver's attempt to follow the kite brought him closer to the street, where traffic was moving swiftly. Jammed between the growing panic of losing his kite and the chaos around him, Oliver lost his footing and, without realizing it, He was heading straight for the road. The cars honked as they sped by, completely unaware of the child just a few steps away from danger. In the midst of the commotion, Jaden, still standing near the park's edge, saw everything unfold in slow motion. His heart began to race as he noticed Oliver unaware of the oncoming traffic. Time seemed to stand still, and Jaden knew what he had to do. The kite string was wrapped tightly around Oliver's neck, pulling at his skin, constricting with every move he made. Oliver struggled, hands tugging at the string, but the more he pulled, the tighter it became. His face was turning a shade of red, his breathing becoming labored, and still no one around seemed to realize the danger. Panic slowly crept into Oliver's eyes as he gasped for air. Jaden's heart raced. The festival's merriment continued around him, but Jaden's focus was solely on the boy in trouble. People still didn't get it. No one was moving fast enough. He could see the fear building in Oliver's eyes as his hands fumbled to untangle the string, only to make the situation worse. Jaden didn't think twice. Without hesitation, he sprinted toward Oliver. His feet pounded against the grass as he dashed toward the struggling boy. His breath came in quick gasps, but he pushed himself harder. His heart beat in his chest as he reached Oliver's side. The string was dangerously tight, and Jaden could see the boy's face slowly losing color. Jaden's hands were shaking, but his determination fueled him as he grabbed the kite string. He tugged at it, feeling the fibers cut into his fingers. It hurt, but Jaden didn't stop. The string dug deeper into his skin, but he fought through the pain. He could hear Oliver's gasps, could see the frantic look in his eyes, and that pushed him even more. His fingers were numb from the sting, but he kept pulling, his body moving instinctively, driven by the need to save Oliver. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, Jaden pulled with all his strength. There was a snap, and the string broke. For a moment, everything stood still. Oliver collapsed to the ground, gasping for air, clutching his throat as his breath came in ragged gasps. The kite string was now severed, the immediate danger gone, but the shock still hung heavy in the air. The crowd around them had fallen silent. What had started as a joyful festival was now a moment of stunned realization. People began to gather, their faces reflecting disbelief as they took in the scene before them. Oliver, shaken but alive, sat on the ground, still clutching his throat, his face pale and his body trembling. Jaden stood over him, panting, his hands still throbbing from the sharpness of the string. His body felt like it was on fire, but relief washed over him as he watched Oliver slowly regain his breath. The tension that had held the crowd in place began to dissipate, but the weight of the moment lingered. It wasn't just a kite. It was a child's life at stake, and Jaden had been the one to save it. People began to approach, murmuring to each other, some looking at Jaden with a mix of awe and disbelief. For a moment, no one knew what to say. They had all witnessed the aftermath of the incident, but it was Jaden's quick thinking that had turned the situation around. Oliver, still gasping but recovering, finally looked up at Jaden. His eyes were wide with a mix of confusion and gratitude. You saved me," he whispered, his voice shaky but filled with sincerity. Jaden gave him a small nod, his heart still racing. He hadn't done it for thanks, but hearing the words made everything feel real. Jaden stepped back, his legs shaking, trying to process everything that had just happened. He had acted without thinking, his body moving faster than his mind could catch up. Now, standing in the midst of the crowd, Jaden felt a strange mix of exhaustion and pride. It was a feeling he had never had before, not in this way. He had saved someone's life, and it was more than just a heroic act. It was a reminder of the power one person's actions could hold in a world where most just watched from the sidelines. The crowd slowly began to disperse, some still whispering about what had happened. Jaden stood alone for a moment, the weight of the moment pressing down on him. But the feeling of relief was greater than any fear he had felt. He had done what was right when no one else did. Would you have done the same? Where are you watching from, and what time is it? Drop a comment below. Oliver's breathing comes in shallow bursts, his chest rising and falling erratically. His eyes lock on Jaden, still wide with shock. You saved me," Oliver whispers, his voice trembling. The words hang heavy in the air, and Jaden can only nod, feeling a strange weight settle in his chest. He had acted without thinking, moving purely on instinct, and now, standing in the midst of the commotion, the reality of the situation was starting to set in. For a few moments, there's nothing but the sound of Oliver's coughing and the murmurs of the crowd. Parents rush forward, their worried expressions reflecting their shock. A few people ask about Oliver's well-being, their eyes flicking between him and Jaden. The nanny finally appears, her face pale with panic, pushing through the gathering crowd. Her eyes immediately fall on Jaden, her brows furrowing in confusion and suspicion. She doesn't speak, but her silence is loud enough to send a chill down Jaden's spine. Jaden's hand still tingles from where the kite string had cut into it. He stands awkwardly, not sure what to do next. He hadn't expected this, hadn't expected to be caught in the middle of all this attention. Just minutes ago, he was another kid, enjoying a festival that his mom could barely afford to attend. Now, he was the center of a scene, his actions magnified by the crowd's gazes, and then the whispers start, quiet at first, but growing louder with every passing second. "Who is that boy?" someone asks, their voice laced with curiosity and suspicion. "Where are his parents?" another voice asks, almost accusingly. Jaden stiffens, his heart beginning to race. It feels like everyone is suddenly looking at him, trying to figure out who he is and what he's doing here. A strange unease washes over him as the eyes of the adults around him grow more scrutinizing. He hadn't even realized how out of place he seemed. In the midst of the luxury, of the well-to-do families enjoying the day, he feels like an intruder, a figure who doesn't belong. Was he playing too rough with the kid? Someone murmurs, eyes narrowing. Jamal can feel it now, the judgment, the distance. The crowd, which had cheered moments ago, is now questioning him. The spark of warmth he had felt from his good deed quickly turns cold. He doesn't belong here, he realizes, not among these people. He was just a kid who had done something good. But now, the simple act of saving a life is being twisted, being questioned. He feels his body tighten, a nervous tremor shooting through him. His hands, still raw from the tugging of the kite string, suddenly feel heavy, unsteady. Jaden steps back, trying to disappear into the crowd, trying to make himself smaller. He feels the weight of all the eyes on him, feels himself being pushed into a corner he never asked for. His stomach churns as the questioning looks grow sharper, the whispers louder. It's as if the moment of heroism is already slipping away, replaced by something darker. He's no longer seen as the kid who saved a life. He's the kid who doesn't belong, the kid who might have done something wrong. He looks down at Oliver, who is still clutching his throat, recovering but still shaken. Jaden doesn't know what to say, doesn't know how to explain that all he had wanted was to help. But before he can think of anything, before he can even find his bearings in the storm of judgment, a black car pulls up, sharp and sleek, the kind of car that stands out among the others. The crowd parts, and the air grows even more tense. The doors of the car open with a soft click, and a man steps out. He's tall, his features sharp and well-groomed. He's wearing a suit, the kind of suit you wear when you have power, when you are someone important. His eyes scan the crowd, his gaze moving from person to person before landing on Jaden. Jaden feels his heart drop. He doesn't recognize the man, but the way the crowd reacts tells him that this person is someone of importance. The people around him suddenly grow silent, all eyes on the man. The murmurs stop, and for a moment, the world seems to hold its breath. The man's sharp gaze flicks to Oliver, then back to Jaden, his eyes scanning him with interest. Then he speaks. His voice is calm, but it carries weight. "Is this the boy?" he asks, his tone both authoritative and curious. The air thickens with tension as the man walks closer to Jaden. People shift nervously, their eyes darting between the two of them. It's as if the world is holding its breath, waiting to see what happens next. Jaden's throat tightens. He opens his mouth to speak, but the words get stuck. He doesn't know what to say to this man, this person who looks like he could make all the problems go away or make them worse. The man's eyes soften, and for a split second, Jaden wonders if maybe, just maybe, he will be treated like a hero. But the judgment in the air doesn't leave him. It lingers. The crowd waits, the moment hanging in the balance. The man's expression hardens, and Jaden feels a strange chill creeping over him. Have you ever been falsely accused? Have you ever faced racism? Share your story in the comments. We want to hear from you. The crowd grows even quieter, if that's even possible. Richard Kensington, a man who's built his empire on power and respect, kneels down in front of Jaden, his sharp eyes softening for a moment. It's not a gesture that Jaden expected. Not from someone like him. The billionaire businessman's movements are deliberate, controlled. Every step, every word is calculated. But kneeling, that's something different, something Jaden can't quite understand. For a moment, Jaden feels like the world around him has stopped. His heart races in his chest, and his hands tremble slightly from the adrenaline that's yet to wear off. He never thought a moment like this would come for him. Never imagined that his quick thinking would lead to anything more than an average day at the park. But now, here he is, standing in front of the most powerful man in the city, with everyone looking at him. It's like the world has suddenly flipped on its head. Richard Kensington's voice breaks the heavy silence. "What's your name, son?" he repeats, his tone calm but insistent. His eyes are locked onto Jaden, waiting for an answer, as if this question carries a weight that Jaden can't even comprehend. Jaden swallows hard. His throat feels tight, and for a split second he wants to shrink back, want to disappear from the spotlight. But that's not what his mom would want. That's not what she taught him. So he stands tall. He takes a deep breath, steadying himself. Jaden, he finally says, his voice quiet but firm. Richard nods slowly, taking in the answer. His eyes flicker toward Oliver, who's still holding his throat, a bit shaken but breathing easier now. Oliver's big blue eyes are locked on Jaden, full of gratitude. "Dad, he saved me," Oliver says, his voice small but clear enough for everyone to hear. His words hit everyone in the crowd like a sudden realization. Jaden didn't harm Oliver. He saved him. Richard's gaze flickers between Jaden and Oliver, and for a moment he just looks at Jaden, assessing him. It's almost as if he's trying to understand the boy in front of him. Jaden doesn't know what to make of it. Is this a moment of gratitude or something else? He doesn't know how people like Richard Kensington work, but there's something about this moment that feels surreal. And then, in an unexpected move, Richard Kensington stands up again. The air around them feels lighter. For the first time since the chaos of the moments before, Richard seems like a man who's in control of the situation, not because of power, but because he understands something that just clicked in his mind. "You did the right thing, Jaden," Richard says, his voice carrying just enough weight to make everyone take notice. The crowd starts to murmur, clearly surprised by his reaction. A billionaire, a man who doesn't often make public shows of emotion, is now standing in front of a boy who could have been anyone else from the street, from a different life. Jaden doesn't know how to respond to that. I just wanted to help," he mutters, not knowing if he's supposed to say more. It was simple for him. Oliver was in danger. That was all that mattered. Richard nods thoughtfully, a slight smile forming on his lips. "I can see that," he says, then turns to the crowd who are watching intently. "This boy here, he doesn't just show bravery. He shows what it means to do what's right in a world where most would turn a blind eye." The tension in the air shifts. The murmurs of judgment and suspicion begin to fade. The people, who had stood frozen just moments before questioning Jaden's motives, now look at him with something else in their eyes, respect, even admiration. Some are still unsure, hesitant, but Richard's words have created a ripple, making people take a second look at the kid who had simply acted in the moment. Richard Kensington stands tall and looks down at Jaden. "I don't know what you were expecting when you saved my son's life, but I can promise you this. What you did today is something worth more than just a thank you. You're not just a boy from the other side of town. You're someone with real heart, real courage, and that's something we can't ignore." Jaden feels the weight of his words sink in, and for the first time that day, he doesn't feel like the outsider. He doesn't feel like the kid who's always had to fight just to be seen. In that moment, Jaden realizes that his actions, not his background, are what matter. That, maybe, just maybe, this could be the start of something bigger, something better. Richard steps back, taking a deep breath, then looks at the people around them. "We'll be helping Jaden here. He deserves more than just to be overlooked." The words hit Jaden hard. He feels a strange flutter in his chest, an emotion he's not used to. Pride, maybe? Hope, perhaps? For the first time, he's not invisible. He's not just a boy from a broken neighborhood. He's someone with a future. As Richard continues, Jaden's mind races. Is this real? Was all of this just a dream? Or has something truly shifted? "I'm offering him a chance," Richard says to the crowd, his gaze still fixed on Jaden. "A chance to learn, to grow, and to do more than just survive." The crowd falls silent. Jaden's heart hammers in his chest. He looks up at Richard, then at Oliver, who's still standing by his father, a small smile on his face. The tension in the air now feels different, as though something monumental has just taken place, and in a way it has. What do you think happens next? Would you trust a billionaire? Keep watching. Richard Kensington's words hang in the air, a moment of sheer disbelief for Jaden. The world around him seems to slow down, as if he's in a dream, but it's a dream that feels too real. He blinks, his eyes wide, staring at the key Richard is holding out in front of him. His brain tries to process what just happened, but it can't catch up. The idea is too big, too impossible. This? It's for my guest house. I want you and your mom to live there. Rent-free, Richard repeats, his voice steady, a far cry from the chaos that had just moments ago surrounded them. Jaden's mouth falls open. What? The words come out in a soft stutter. He doesn't even know how to respond, doesn't know if he even can. All the things he's been through, the struggles, the exhaustion of living in a broken system, flash through his mind in an instant. How could someone like Richard Kensington, with all his wealth and power, want to offer something like this to someone like him? It doesn't make sense. Zion, his little brother, stands nearby, silent, wide-eyed, and watching the entire exchange unfold. He doesn't know what to say either, but the awe in his eyes tells Jaden everything he needs to know. They were used to scraping by, relying on handouts, living day by day. They never imagined anything could be different. As Richard holds out the key, the world feels distant, almost unreal. Jaden's hands tremble slightly as he takes the key, feeling its weight in his palm. It's just a small metal object, but in this moment, it feels like the weight of the world. This is more than just a key. It's a chance that he never thought he'd get, a chance that most people like him never get. He looks over at his mother, who's just arrived, walking quickly toward him. She sees the key in his hand and freezes for a moment, confused. She knows that look. She's seen it in Jaden's eyes before. The look of disbelief, like when someone gives you something so valuable that you can't quite believe it's real. She's about to ask what's going on when she sees Richard standing there, offering them the key. Her eyes widen in shock. Tears start to form. For a moment, she can't speak. She just stares at Jaden, then at Richard, her voice caught in her throat. What is this? She manages to ask, her words tremulous. Richard, ever calm, looks between the two of them. It's for you both. I want you to have a home, a place to live where you don't have to worry about rent. You deserve it, Jaden. You saved my son's life. Now, I want to help save your future. For a split second, everything feels like it's standing still. Jaden watches his mom and he sees the tears in her eyes. Tears he's never seen before, not of sorrow, but of something else. Hope. It's the first time in his life that he's seen that in her eyes. The weight of it is almost too much to bear. Jaden feels a lump form in his throat as he watches his mom's face transform. This is a woman who has worked tirelessly to scrape by, who has never asked for anything more than what she could afford. And here, standing in front of her, is someone who is offering her more than she ever thought possible. Jaden's heart races. His emotions, too complex to process, are swarming inside him. The anger, the frustration, the helplessness of their lives had always been there. But now, in this single moment, those feelings are replaced by something else, something new. Gratitude, hope, and most of all, disbelief. This is too much, his mother whispers, shaking her head. Why are you doing this? She looks at Richard, her voice a mix of gratitude and confusion. We're just regular people. Richard's face softens, his eyes filled with sincerity. That's exactly why I'm doing this. You're regular people who deserve more than what life has handed you. You're good people. And sometimes, that's all it takes for someone to make a difference in your life. You saved my son. This is just me paying it forward. Jaden doesn't know how to respond to that. His heart is in his throat. His mother's hand reaches out to touch his shoulder, and she holds him there for a long moment. It's as if they've both just come to the realization that their lives are about to change forever. For a moment, they stand there, in the middle of the park, as the world continues to move around them. People are still talking, still laughing, still enjoying the festival, but for Jaden and his mom, the world feels different. It feels like they've just been given a chance, one they never thought they'd have. Jaden turns to Richard, his voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know what to say." Richard smiles, his eyes warm. "You don't have to say anything. Just know that you're not alone anymore." The words hit Jaden harder than he expects. Not alone. He's always been alone, just him and his mom struggling, surviving. But now, for the first time, it feels like maybe things could be different. Maybe there's hope after all. As they head towards the car, Jaden holds the key tightly in his hand, feeling its weight. This isn't just a key to a house. It's a key to a new future. A future where they don't have to worry anymore, where they can finally rest and look forward to something better. And maybe, just maybe, it's a future where they can start dreaming again. Jaden and his mother stand in awe as they approach the guest house, the key still resting heavily in Jaden's hand. The house, so different from the cramped apartment they had come from, feels like a dream. The freshly painted walls, the clean, well-furnished rooms, and the air of safety that fills every corner. All of it is so new, so foreign to them. For once, there's no need to check if the heat is working. No more fights over overdue bills, and no more wondering how they would make it to the next paycheck. It's a place they can finally call home. For the first time, Jaden's mom takes a long, deep breath. She lets it out slowly, her face softening as she looks at her son. The years of struggle, the weight of their daily battle, seem to fall away in that moment. She's seen so much hardship in her life, and now, standing in front of this new home, she can finally let herself believe that it's all been worth it. Inside, everything is already set up. The furniture, the soft lighting, and even a basket of fresh fruit waiting on the kitchen counter make it clear that someone had gone out of their way to make them feel welcome. Jaden's mother walks through the rooms, her hands trailing along the smooth countertops, her eyes scanning the space with disbelief. She turns to Jaden, her voice cracking as she says, This is ours?" Jaden nods, still in shock. He can't believe it either. Just a few days ago, they were living in constant uncertainty, unsure of where they would go next. And now, they have a place, a real, solid place to stay. It's almost too much to process. "Yeah, Mom, it's ours," Jaden says quietly, the weight of it all hitting him slowly. Suddenly, a voice calls from outside. "Hey, Jaden!" Jaden looks out the window and sees Oliver, the young boy he saved at the park, running toward the house with a huge grin on his face. He waves energetically, his face lighting up when he sees Jaden. "Want to fly kites again?" Oliver calls out excitedly. Jaden feels a smile spread across his face, the kind of smile that feels real, like the world isn't as heavy anymore. His heart swells with something he hasn't felt in years, hope. "Yeah, I do," Jaden replies, his voice filled with a newfound sense of belonging. The innocence of the invitation, the carefree spirit of a child asking to play, feels like an invitation to something bigger. It's not just about the kites. It's about the possibility that maybe, just maybe, life could be different from now on. As Jaden steps outside, he looks at the bright blue sky and the kite in Oliver's hand. The wind picks up, lifting the kite higher, and Jaden follows Oliver across the yard, both of them laughing and running, the kite soaring behind them. For the first time in a long while, Jaden doesn't feel like he's running from something. He feels like he's running toward something better. Richard Kensington watches from the distance, standing quietly near the window of his own home, a soft smile tugging at his lips. He's seen the transformation in Jaden, in the way he carries himself now. Money, he knows, can't fix everything. It can't erase the past or change everything that's happened. But maybe, just maybe, it can give someone a chance to make a future for themselves, to stop struggling just to survive, and to finally begin living. He watches Jaden and Oliver, their laughter carried by the wind, and he knows that, in his own way, he's given them more than just a place to stay. He's given them the opportunity to thrive. That's the power of a single act of kindness, a moment where one person's generosity changes the course of another's life. As Jaden watches the kite soar higher and higher, he whispers to himself, maybe things can change. And for the first time, he believes it. The future isn't as uncertain as it used to be. It's filled with possibilities, and for the first time, he has a place in it. And in that moment, Jaden knows that no matter where life takes him from here, he's not alone anymore. He has hope. He has a family. And he has a chance to become something more than what the world once thought of him. Everything can change, he thinks, as he watches the kite float higher against the endless sky.